So thank you again for joining the executive panel discussion. We're going to spend our time focused on gleaning insights from 3 industry experts on how they are innovating to build relationships. As we move through our time today, we hope you find value in learning what other brands are doing and what industry leaders are recommending as we navigate how to make progress on such unexpected territories. We know that nothing replaces face-to-face sales and marketing. And during times like this, it's important for leaders of organizations to innovate, to continue to build relationships, no matter what the times bring. So as we wait for a couple more to jump on, I want to thank our sponsors and Parallel, Leadus, and Modus for making this event happen. If you aren't familiar with them, let me give you a quick overview. And Parallel is a brand experience agency that focuses on experiential marketing, trade shows, virtual, retail, pop-ups, and brand environments. And what's really interesting is during this crazy time that we're all living in, they have done a small pivot into making PPE for companies around the nation while still partnering with brands on their core business. Modus, on the other hand, they have developed a proprietary software that marketers use called the Modus Sales Hub to help sales reps easily access content to support modern buying conversations and gain visibility to engagement and ROI. And last but not least is Leadus. They come with a whole house full of jokes. So Tracy Ellis is ready to hop on if my internet goes out. But when they're not telling jokes, they specialize in marketing automation and strategy. They help companies align sales and marketing to drive business results and innovation and provide meaningful customer experiences. So our panelists, who you all want to hear from, are coming up next. I'm going to have our sponsors introduce them. Don Gantz, why don't you kick it off right away?
Thanks, Megan. Good morning, everybody. Certainly want to thank you for joining us. I'm Don Gantz, one of the partners at In Parallel. Many of you may know Travis Stanton. He's the editor of Exhibitor magazine and travels the world to find best trade show and event experiences. Travis always has great information to share. Great presenter, so certainly join me in welcoming Travis to today's event. Thanks, Travis.
Hey, thanks. Happy to be here.
Luis, do you want to introduce your panelist?
Sure. Good day, everyone. I'm Louise Anderson, Vice President of Modus, and I am excited to introduce Alice Hyman. She's been recognized in the U.S. and globally as a leading expert on the complex sales process. And the reason she gets some of that rating is because she's always looking for new, innovative ways that organizations can actually excel. And that's a combination of innovative tools along with proven sales tactics to increase meaningful seller and buyer conversations. So I'm looking forward to hearing what she has to say today.
Hi, everybody. I'm excited to be here and be in this great conversation.
Tracy?
Yes, good morning, everybody. Tracy Ellis, I'm the CEO of Leadus. I'm excited to welcome Stephanie Hammis-Betty, a dear friend of mine, and the Senior Vice President of Innovation Design at US Bank. She's at the front end of innovation, looking for new ideas to bring to the bank that will enhance relationships and business results with their customers. So thanks, Stephanie, for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So far, it's been a lot of fun, so I'm looking forward to the rest of the conversation.
We did start on a very high note with jokes. For those of you who are jumping on late, you missed really good jokes. So thank you again to our sponsors, Don, Luis, and Tracy. Let's get this executive panel conversation started. If you have questions throughout our time together, you can post them within Zoom's Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. If you haven't used it before, it's pretty easy. You click Q&A and you plug your questions in. It should be pretty easy. So I'm going to start with a very difficult question. How are you 3 staying inspired in your work life during such unexpected times? It's a hard one, I know. Who wants to go first?
Oh, I'll go first. I think, inspiration is an interesting thing. We all get our inspiration from different places. I think in times like these, though, it can be difficult to stay inspired. And I think that it's really important to recognize that we are going through some things that we've never been through before, and that will give us some feelings maybe that we haven't felt before. We need to feel those feelings, and we need to recognize that it may be harder to stay inspired, and we should let other people know sometimes when we're not feeling as inspired and get some inspiration from them. But also just get outside in nature and do things like fresh flowers in your house so that you have something beautiful to look at. Of course, do all the things that we know: exercise, stay hydrated, eat well, get lots of sleep. People are really tired right now. Zoom can be fatiguing. So to stay inspired, some of the things that I do are just what everybody else is doing, but I am very mindful about it and really make sure that I'm doing those things. And when I'm not feeling so inspired, I try to let someone else know so that they can lend a hand and help me stay inspired.
Yeah, I'll definitely echo that. I think it's really important to tell people, tell your coworkers, tell your boss. I know a lot of people are very uncomfortable with the idea of going to their boss and saying, hey, I'm feeling super uninspired right now. I'm feeling super unmotivated right now. But you have to do that. As a boss, I can't help my employees if I don't know that they're struggling, right? And I've had people deal with feeling unmotivated, with depression and anxiety. There are some very real things going on right now, and it's having very real effects on people. And you have to be open about that, because I might not be able to fix it. Your boss might not be able to fix it, but we definitely can if we don't know, right? So I think that's very important. I also think something else Alice kind of alluded to is just acknowledging that these are tough times and letting go of the past, letting go of office politics and letting go of the frustration, because this is just the reality that we live in, right? So if you don't let all that go, you're just going to be stewing in this kind of unhealthy romanticization of what things used to be like, and they're not that way anymore, and they're not going to be that way anymore. So the last thing I would share, I guess, well, two things. One real quick. Is just to try things, right? To ideate. Exhibitor is not an organization that's used to really moving fast. We like to be very thoughtful about new products and new projects that we work on, and we try to think through every implication. But when COVID hit, we kind of had to throw that all out the window and be willing to make mistakes. So we launched a number of new initiatives in what for us was in record time. And the process that worked best for us was to, have those brainstorming meetings where my boss says this isn't a decision meeting, right? So when somebody says, well, how would we do that? In what platform would we use to do that? Those questions don't get to be asked. This is just an ideation meeting. And then kind of settle on 3 or 4 big ideas that you like and assign them to smaller groups. And those smaller groups then kind of flesh those ideas out a little bit more and come back with a proposal. And that's been super helpful for us in terms of getting buy-in, getting people on the same page, and really moving ideas from that ideation stage to a proposal much quicker. And the last thing, can I get one more, is I recently interviewed Andy Core, and he's the author of Change Your Day, Not Your Life. And he said something that really stuck with me. He said, the way that you start your day is the way that you're going to end your day. So if you wake up, like I do a lot of days, frustrated and aggravated at the disruption in the world and the lack of knowledge, the uncertainty, that's the way that your day is going to go. And so I've tried really hard in the last couple of weeks since my interview with him to, before I go to bed and when I wake up, think of something that I'm excited to do that day, work related. And you can do that too. I really truly find that I'm able to segue into my work in the morning much quicker. I'm more optimistic, and that allows me to be more creative. And if you're struggling with something, if you're like, I don't have anything I'm super excited about, then just be thankful that you have a job still in this environment, because that is a big deal right now. And I think if you look at the work that you have to do as the work that you get to do, you're going to be more motivated and more inspired.
Yeah.
Wow. I love that so much. Stephanie, do you want to add anything in?
Yeah, I do. I think being in innovation and probably seeking disruption on a lot of things, I've kind of embraced the change. I think initial was really hard, separating from the team and sort of working differently, but I also kind of have looked at it as a new opportunity, because so many people are also in this joint experience. Some of it is discomfort. Some of it is trying to find a new way to do something in a way that we didn't do before because of the connections we had. I have found that so many people are so much more open to collaborating, you know, across the world even. You know, there's people who I probably normally wouldn't have met with or talked with, but we're seeking collaborations with just because they're posting more, they're sharing more of their work, which allows us to sort of look into it and say, hey, well, what about this too? So I think some of this downturn and the way the world has shifted has also connected us more to people if we're out there looking for it. And I think that's been sort of my biggest excitement about some of these changes, and what has been in some cases a disconnect from the way things used to be into this new opening of the way that things are kind of norming now. And obviously we haven't, you know, even settled on what the new world is probably going to look like. But I do think that with this disruption is going to come opportunity. And I see it. And I see it in the way small businesses are coming together. And I see the way in groups are trying to help different groups than they've helped before, and how products are even shifting. You know, Travis, you mentioned brainstorming new ideas. That kind of thing is happening across a lot of organizations. And I feel like this, in some cases, is that jolt that some groups needed just to get started on that. And I find that really exciting. I think the other thing is that because we're not exactly always with humans, we're using Zoom and other WebEx things, is, you know, really self-monitoring too. You know, I love the check-in stuff that you're talking about, Travis, but I also think that, you know, for yourself and keeping yourself energized, because sometimes it's hard to lead when you're not. And, you know, I read a lot too, and I just recently went through some of BJ Fogg's, which is behavioral science stuff. And one of the things he said, just from a behavior change, from a mindset that I love, is, you know, every day when you wake up, the first thing you do when you plant your feet on the ground is say, today's going to be a great day.
That's right.
And I absolutely thought that was ridiculous, but I do it. And it really has shifted my mindset, and it gets me sort of excited in a way that I really didn't expect, because it's a simple thing that you probably have said before. But when you attack it with meaning, I do think that that's also a helpful mindset approach for, you know, some of it what feels like endless, you know, WebExes and Zoom meetings in a day.
Yes, that's great. Wow, those are so insightful. I'm going to be applying most of those to my life. Every day I'm going to wake up. Great day. So Stephanie, since you have the mic, let's start with you. Can you share some strategies and best practices around customer and employee engagement that you found to be beneficial in this season?
Yeah. Well, you know, I think when it first started, right, there was the initial like, well, it's just everyone is okay, right? So I think the very first thing was just checking in with employees pretty regularly. We started the virtual coffees, the virtual lunches, and the virtual happy hours just to make sure that people were having that connection point, and that we could check in to say, you know, are things okay? Are you doing the things that you feel you should be? Can we help you? That kind of thing. And I think that kind of mindset of like the virtual coffee, the virtual lunch just kind of leaked over into the fact that normally I would have a lot of lunches out in a week or you know, meetings with external customers and partners. So we started to extend that over into virtual events as well. Collaboration sessions, brainstorms, even just like, hey, I read this thing, would you like to talk about it with me? And we can think of some new ideas. So really leveraging that digital connection, but providing a place where you might have a topic or a thought to share, and just really forming some people around it. I think so much in the early days, we were all just driving towards, you know, how do we connect with people and feel, you know, we're humanly connected. As now the weather's gotten nice, right? I think a lot of people are getting out and having more of that energy release. And I think, you know, now what it is helping people understand what comes next. And so, you know, I don't think we're in recovery mode at all, but I do think that people are beginning to look up and beyond to where their seat is right now and say, you know, how are our products going to be different? What are the needs of our customers going to be? And so we've done a lot of listening to our customers. We've done a lot of, you know, surveying and understanding where they're at. And of course, you know, just go out and listen in social media, and you can see a lot of the ideas and in some cases the stress that customers are sharing around different things. So that really gives you that sort of empathy approach, so that when you do bring them into a conversation, or when you do start to think about the new opportunity, you can do it from a place of understanding what their needs might be, so you can better serve them in the future. I think it's also kind of an exciting time for some businesses just to be able to sort of talk about, you know, we may not be able to serve customers in the way we did today. What would that future look like? And I think some of those sessions are actually kind of exciting as well. It's much better than thinking about what you've lost and more about what you could gain.
Yes, that's great. Speaking about the future and contacts and building relationships, Alice, do you have any tips to share on gaining new contacts, or is it using your current database and your current relationships, or is it building new ones? Like, how do you navigate that in the season?
So this is where I think there is a great opportunity for innovation right now. We are used to contacting our customers and our prospects via phone, social media, and email. But I can tell you this, I don't want another email in my box. Travis, how about you? Stephanie? Anybody want another email in their box? No. So we have got to be innovative, and we have got to create ways to engage our current customers, because customer retention is key right now. I have seen some companies losing customers out the back door as fast as they are bringing them in the front door, and that just doesn't work. So we have to be keenly aware of what's happening with our customers, make sure we're serving them and helping them, and really being compassionate, because we have to remember that whatever we're going through, and maybe it's not so bad or maybe it's really bad, they may be going through something similar. So on top of everything else that's happening in the world, you still have your family and your job and all of your other things. So now you're going to them and asking them to make decisions, whether they're your customer or prospect, you're asking them to make another change. Purchase what we buy, make another change. So we start with our customer retention, right? And then we move out to our prospecting with new people, and those can be leveraged really well. So in terms of innovative ways to connect with people, whether they're already customers or you want them to be your customers, the first thing I highly recommend is leveraging your existing relationships. Now that's not new or innovative, but maybe you could do it in a new or innovative way. Since we can't get together in person so much, although we're starting to be able to, perhaps you could do a virtual coffee with a customer and someone they'd like to introduce you to. So as people who follow me know, I'm very big on get introductions. It's much easier than doing cold outreach. So I figure out how to have a party online where your customers bring some people that they know that they'd like to introduce you to. Now, a really great one that I saw lately was an online wine tasting. So that was very innovative. I hadn't thought of that, right? And so they invited customers and prospects, and it was a very select group. So it was people that they wanted to meet each other and they really wanted to do business with. And they shipped out the wine and cheese in advance. And the wine master got online and gave everybody a wonderful wine tasting. But we also had networking. So before the winemakers started, we all introduced ourselves and told a little bit about each other. And then, we got on and tasted the wine and commented on the wine. So it was really fun. And I find that innovative. So you could do a book club the same way. You could invite your customers and prospects you could mail them the book, read them the book, and ask them to get online and do a book club with you. But you do have to start doing other things. So a lot of people think that they just have to get on a virtual event or a virtual trade show, and that's the only way. But it isn't the only way. In fact, Modus has just recently launched a new way to engage customers, and I just have to make sure I say the title. It's called Virtual Experience. So again, something innovative. It's trade shows, virtual trade shows are not for everyone, right, Travis? We don't want to think that that's the only way we can engage our customers now, because there's not in person. We've got to be innovative and use like this virtual experience that Modus put up, where the customer and the prospect can be involved and engaged, but they don't have to attend, a whole trade show or even an event of any kind. They can do it asynchronously. So we've just got to start coming up with things. And like Travis was saying earlier, if you brainstorm with your group, you can come up with many interesting ways to engage your customer and prospects without having to be involved in a virtual trade show.
Love it. Alice, you had me at wine tasting. We are going to implement that at Parallel. Right, Don? We're doing this. Awesome. That was really, really awesome, Alice. So Travis, we kind of got on the topic of trade shows and virtual experiences. You're the trade show expert. You are. Everyone knows that. Yeah, raise those eyebrows. So tell us, how are you seeing brands optimize their face-to-face and trade show programs in a socially distant world? And paperclip, how might events look in a post-COVID world?
Yeah, so it's obviously a really difficult time for people who are used to connecting face to face, who are used to bringing in sales leads and everything through live trade shows and events, because those obviously are not happening right now. So one of the things that I've seen is a lot of marketers taking what I kind of call a kitchen sink approach to working through every possible channel that they can, any way that they can reach out and touch their customers, they're trying to employ it. So whether it's webinars or virtual events or virtual trade shows or social media or blogs or different thought leadership kinds of avenues. So in lieu of kind of that silver bullet, which trade shows really are, because you can achieve such a breadth of different objectives, and you can, satisfy the requirements and the needs of so many different internal stakeholders in one place at one time. But because that's not there, they're kind of taking a little bit of a scattershot approach in a lot of cases and just, trying, which is great. And I think ideation is really important, but I also think it's important to have a little bit of strategy behind it. So I would encourage you to do something that Stephanie said that they're doing, and that's to really be in touch with your customers. So if you're not interfacing directly with your customers, be in touch with your sales team, because they probably are interfacing directly with them. And that's probably more important than ever before, because you're going to want to know what they want from you right now, because it's probably different from what they wanted from you 6 months ago. They're going to want to know, or you're going to want to know what channels they're likely to engage with you on. Many organizations before COVID had this kind of mentality that if it's not going to make us money, we're not going to do it, right? We're not nonprofit organizations, but now in many cases, there's not really money to be made. People just aren't buying in a lot of industries, and revenue is kind of drying up a little bit. So the relationship with your customer becomes absolutely key. And anything that you can do to grow and nurture that relationship is essential right now. And that might mean that instead of traditional marketing where you're pushing your product, you're maybe offering up tips and research to help your customers solve the challenges that they're facing right now. And that might not involve buying whatever it is that you're selling, right? So focus less on products, focus more on solutions. And your products might be those solutions or might be incorporated in those solutions, but they might not be also. And if you're not in a position to generate revenue, work to generate goodwill with your customers, because I really truly believe that that's becoming a currency that you need to focus on today. And I think it's one of the things that's going to separate businesses that just survive from those that thrive post-pandemic. Another thing that I encourage you to do is take a look at your past leads that you sourced from live trade shows and events, because you might have discarded those for one reason or another, or considered them dead leads because they didn't convert to a purchase within a certain amount of time. Reaching out to those people and rekindling those relationships can help you eke a little bit more value out of that past investment in face-to-face marketing. In terms of what trade shows might look like moving forward, the biggest difference I think that marketers have to be aware of is that there's going to be lower attendance, at least for the foreseeable future. There is going to be a lag between trade shows reopening and attendance getting back to where it was pre-COVID. Just because people are nervous, people are unsure, and there's a group of people who want to be those early adopters, and they're going to be there regardless. But one thing to keep in mind is that historically, when trade show attendance dips, the quality ticks up, right? So people aren't going to fly halfway across the country and spend the money and the time to attend a trade show if they don't have something that they need, if they don't have the budget to purchase it, and they don't have a purchasing plan to make that purchase in the near future. So people are attending out of necessity. They need to purchase that new product or get that new solution or deal with something that they're struggling with today. So you might see your lead counts decrease, but I think you're going to see the quantity of those leads that are considered hot leads or A leads or however you define them proportionately increase, right? So you're also going to see a lot of new sanitation measures. You're going to see new restrictions and requirements that are going to be put in place by show organizers, by event venues, and even by state and local governments. And as face-to-face marketers, you're going to have to navigate all of those. And Exhibitor, we will certainly do our best to help you with that, but it's going to be challenging. And I think the other big thing to keep in mind with trade shows also is there's a big percentage. We recently issued a second white paper on how COVID-19 is impacting the trade show and events industry. And if you want to look at that, you can download it at exhibitoronline.com/COVID. But one of the things that research has helped us to understand is that a lot of exhibitors are looking at increasing their local, regional, events versus national and international events, because we know that international events are going to take much longer to resume. So in the meantime, you might want to look at smaller regional shows that maybe were too small for you before. Maybe you were afraid that they weren't going to attract a critical mass of people, but that's going to be a step to getting back into those live events. And that's another step to fostering those face-to-face relationships, which are so important to generating the kind of trust it takes to convert a prospect to a customer.
Wow, that's awesome. I love how you talked about the quality of lead is going to go up, because that's what we all want.
Yeah, I totally agree with Travis on that. And I think you'll have more time because there's not as many people. So the quality is going to be up and you'll have more time with those qualified leads.
Absolutely.
I love that. That's so good. Stephanie, I know we've been talking a lot about having conversations with prospects and customers. Would you add anything else as it relates to innovation and what you're doing and what you're seeing in the marketplace of how people can have meaningful conversations when they can't see you in person or they can't even see your products?
Well, I think meaningful conversations a lot of times stem around what's relevant. And so, use your commute time that you no longer have to drive to work to do some reading. Maybe read up on the business, read up on some trends within that customer's industry, or even just see if there's certain, new articles on that company that might be relevant. I think connecting to something that they may be interested in or that you think impacts their industry and sort of using that as a connector, I think is important, because it allows you to sort of check into maybe a topic that they're interested in, or at least open up a conversation of which they maybe appreciated, a white paper or an article that also helped them think differently. I think it's important, to support people during this time, because you don't know all that they're transitioning or going through, but we still have business to figure out, and there's still trends and things happening sort of all around us. So what's interesting out there that you can use as a way to connect something relevant to those customers.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. That's great.
Absolutely.
So we're going to bounce back a second. Alice, you brought up virtual trade shows. I'm so glad you did, virtual experiences. Travis, Alice, really anyone can chime in here. Do you guys find value in this? Is this I've heard things of dual strategy, your physical presence and your virtual presence. I've heard no virtual. I've heard everyone go. What do you think about it? Would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, we know from our research that our exhibit managers anticipate that there's going to be more hybrid events in the future, and I think that's the right way to look at it. I don't think that virtual events are going to be a replacement. I think that they're going to be an adjunct to live trade shows and events, at least for the foreseeable future, probably for the next few years. And I think then, in terms of, is it going to be a long-term popularity? Is it going to be something that sticks around for a long time? That's going to depend on how virtual events evolve, and whether or not, of course, the exhibitors are finding value out of that. But I think it really depends on your objectives. And I also think it depends on who you ask, because, we have an editorial advisory board that we consult, and I've asked them a couple of times about, what have been their experiences with virtual trade shows and events. And some of them have had great results, and they're like, it was fantastic. We got leads, we, got done what we wanted to get done. Others felt like it was a complete waste of time. So I think you have to be very realistic about your expectations. If you're going into a virtual trade show with the goal of generating lots of high quality leads, I think you're probably going to be disappointed. You're more likely to generate two things. One, thought leadership. Really think about the virtual sphere as an opportunity to push thought leadership, to establish yourself as a leader in your industry, to reach out and generate that goodwill and use it as a touch point to continue those relationships. The second thing is, you're probably not going to get leads as we think of leads, but you're going to get contacts. Okay. So think about those as totally different things. If you're trying to build your mailing list and you're trying to do some kind of mass blasts about some new product that you're offering or something, yeah, those contacts are important. And so it's one way to get that. But generally speaking, the data that I've seen and the people that I've spoken to who've done virtual events, have kind of said that it's great for thought leadership, it's great for generating new contacts, but in terms of developing that contact as a lead, you kind of need to take those contacts and you can't really treat them as you would a trade show lead where you've had a conversation with them and you've maybe identified their budget or their needs. You have to start a little bit further back in that sales cycle process with those contacts, because just because somebody registered for your event, your virtual event, doesn't mean that they tuned into it. And even if they tuned into it, doesn't mean that they paid attention. And even if they paid attention, it doesn't mean that they engaged with you or learned anything about your company or your products in the process. So you may or may not have moved them anywhere along that sales cycle. So it's kind of like, I think about a virtual trade show contact as somebody who maybe stepped on the corner of your booth carpet at a live trade show and then walked back into the aisle. Like, it's just a person who kind of engaged with you, who gave you the time of day a little bit. So just make sure that you're knowing the difference between those virtual event contacts, which I do not call leads, and live trade show leads, because they're a completely different species.
Yeah, they're going to need a lot more nurturing, but I want to say that events of any kind have always been and will always be a great way to build relationships with customers and prospects. So we do need to continue having events in some manner, right? And I agree with Travis that there is going to be a hybrid. What's interesting with some of the companies that I'm watching do these virtual events, and I've been participating in them, they are getting more people registered than they might have if they had done it in person, because having a virtual event does take away restrictions of travel and childcare and budgets and other things, right? But of course, then those organizations aren't making any money if they're just doing a lot of free events. So we have to really think carefully and again, be innovative. Events are important. We need to do them, but how can we do them better? So if we are going to have a virtual event of any kind, like Travis said, they range from really great to really awful. And what we want is all of them to be really great, and we want to be known for great events, whether they're big summits and, with lots of days and lots of people, or whether they're a one-time wine tasting event, like I was mentioning. The key ingredient that's missing from the ones that are pretty awful is networking. And so if you're going to do an event of any kind, you have to figure out how to do the networking. Here's an example, an upcoming event that I'm working on with a group of other women sales pros. We're going to have 10-minute networking spots. So when they first get on, we're going to put them into Zoom rooms and 10 minutes of networking. And they're going to have a question that goes with what the first speaker is going to say. So they get their mindset ready and they're talking about it. The speaker's going to come on for 30 minutes. They're going to do 3 interactive pieces. So every 10 minutes, there's either a poll or some kind of a way to get the audience involved. They have to chat it in. They have a worksheet. Then we're going to do another 10-minute networking break. And of course, there'll be, other little quick bio breaks and stuff too. Then another 30 minutes, then a networking break. And we're using the Zoom rooms to put people into these networking opportunities to get to know each other, because no one wants to pay for an event where they don't get to meet anybody. I mean, this is recorded. I can listen to it later at my convenience. There's no reason for me to be involved live. So if you want people to be involved live at your event, whether it's an hour event or a 3-day event, you have got to figure out how to include the network. And there's just so many ways. Please reach out to me and I'll give you 10 ways to network at your next virtual event. I think that's going to be the key, because that's in person. That's why we go. Like, I want to see Stephanie. I want to see Travis. I want to see you. I want to chat with you. Of course, I want to see the exhibitors, but I want to see my friends too. And I want to meet new friends. So the networking is really the critical piece of getting these events to really work well.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Yeah. Go ahead, Stephanie.
I was just going to build on Alice was saying around thinking through the events and the networking. I think that's really critical. But, something that I've seen that's been so helpful around some of the events I've been attending recently is as a user or an attendee of the event, they kind of have you self-select the topic or the need that you might have for that event, so that it kind of gets you focused in their minds around what you're really looking for. So if I do want to network, but I also want to learn about these topics specifically, or I have interest in this other topic. And I found that that allows it to work more like a trade show, and that you are sort of get funneled then into the things that you're super interested in. And it feels like it's a better use of the sponsor's time as well as the attendee, because you get right to the heart of what you might be interested in. I love the networking too. And, I've seen it too in some of the events where, you put in 2 things about yourself. That also helps that connection then when you network, because you can either talk about those points, like, I have a pet chipmunk, those kinds of things. People make that a conversation then when you meet. And so that fact that you're not in person also makes it feel a little bit more like you're connected, because you already know a little something about the people who are there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to add to, I think that people have to also be really mindful of the fact of not getting too over excited about webinars and virtual events, for the reason that we know that 88% of our readers are still working from home right now. And we're doing webinars that are getting 1,000, 1,400, 1,500 registrations, which is, blowing our minds in a sense. But we also know that at some point those people are going back to the home office. And what we don't know yet, and what we suspect will happen, is that once they go back to the home office, we're going to see the number of registrations go down, and probably a significant drop in the number, or in the percentage of registered attendees that actually show up. Because when you're in the office, I think you get pulled into meetings, you're back into the flow of things. So I think that people who are having success with webinars now just have to be mindful of the fact that, whether it's 2 months or 6 months or whenever it is down the line, that people are going back to business as usual, whatever that is, that there might be a pretty significant drop off in those.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the things we really need to do is keep our salespeople engaged, right? So that they can keep engaging with our customers and prospects. And I think like Modus does a great job with that, with their tools, helping keep people engaged, right? Lots of ways to let the salespeople be engaged besides a webinar, besides a virtual event. There's got to be lots of other innovation going on to make sure our salespeople can stay engaged. And again, just lots of different ways, not just the old, more email, more LinkedIn requests, that kind of thing. I mean, even direct mail is working well today. People love to get something in the mail. And because our budgets are different now, and not everybody's budget is shrunk, by the way. Some people now, they're not paying for an exhibit booth. They're not flying people. They're not feeding people. They're not housing people. They can use a small budget to maybe send out a really cool kit with some fun stuff in it for working from home, or get back to the office, or whatever it is, with some PPE stuff in it, and some, a nice water bottle that maybe has, the kind of surface that doesn't collect germs or whatever. Again, be innovative, think outside the box, use your budget differently, and give your salespeople lots of different ways to engage with the customers and prospects, and stay engaged with them, not necessarily trying to sell them something, but like Travis said earlier and Stephanie alluded to, we have to help right now. We have to bring up things maybe they haven't thought of. Maybe we get to have time to read and they don't. We're sending them some great information that they need to read, maybe they didn't see it. But just keep in mind that there's just a whole array of things we can do to stay engaged with our customers.
Well, and also don't forget, we talk so much about customers and prospects, but within that prospect list should also be your past customers who maybe you haven't done business with for a few years. And I love the direct mail, idea. If you have an address where you can actually reach somebody, so many of the things, that we have in our database are corporate addresses, and we have had some trouble with getting things to people who might be working from home. But just the other day, I got a bottle of tequila. It was probably the best gift they could have sent me, but a gift, it was a special tequila. It wasn't just tequila, but a gift from a company that we haven't done business with in 3 years. What they didn't know, but might have been hoping, is that we've been having some struggles with the company that we have been working with. And I got that and thought, wow, that's really thoughtful. The thought behind it and the creativity that went into how they selected this, I thought was really cool. And I have a meeting with them next week to discuss possibly doing business together again. So you just never know. Don't count out those old clients either.
They knew you needed a margarita, Travis.
Well, who doesn't?
Yeah, I'll take one right now.
Right.
Right now I would. Alice, I know you were just talking about this, but being the sales expert, I mean, Forbes has kind of ranked you one of the best and the best out there. Any other insights that people can do to help their organizations achieve their sales goals? I know most of us, our sales have been completely crushed, and not crushed in a good way, crushed in a bad way. What else can people be doing right now when they're feeling stuck and feeling a little unmotivated?
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that it runs the gamut from companies who are doing better than they ever thought they could to companies who have been completely stopped in their tracks and really, truly cannot sell at all right now. Although it's, now it's starting to come back with those couple of months where it was really desperate. Keeping your sales team motivated is critical. And just throwing new tools or new stuff at them, that's not extremely motivating. So we've got to be really careful. So again, as I mentioned, budgets are different right now. It's not that they're necessarily less, but they're being used differently. We really need to think carefully. And I cannot say this loudly enough to everyone out there. At these uncertain, crazy, turbulent times, the CEO of the company must lead. The CEO of the company must be involved in the sales and must show the sales team, the customer success team, all the customer facing people, really what it is that's needed and wanted by our customers. So our CEO needs to become our chief customer officer right now and should really be looking into the insights and the information about our customer base and help our marketing teams, our sales teams, our customer success teams to get the tools and support they need to truly stay motivated and to be able to do their jobs. In the case where it's so bad that you really can't sell to your audience right now, it may require a product pivot or a market pivot that only the CEO and senior team can make that decision and bring that vision and direction down to the sales and marketing team. It could be, in the case where there's so much business we don't, we're going out of our minds. On the other side, only the CEO and the senior team can really bring in the support and do the hiring and make those decisions that are going to completely support our customer facing teams, and then everybody's somewhere in the middle. So I'll say this to all of you who are listening: if your CEO and senior team are heads down trying to figure out head count and lending issues and all of the funding from SBA and other things, go to them and ask them to please take some focus and put it on to the sales and the customer facing teams and really start thinking about the customer, what they need, what they want, and what we can do to differentiate ourselves from everybody else out there. And it may at this moment in time not be selling more or selling something. It may be really, as everyone was saying earlier, that support that's needed. Maybe it's just teaching them how to use the tools we've already sold them better than ever before. But we really, really need the leadership from the top of our organizations right now. We need to hear what their vision is for our future, and we need their support.
Wow, that's awesome. That's so good. All right, I'm going to ask you guys one last thing before we go into everyone's Q&A. And if you do have questions, please make sure to use that Q&A prompt at the bottom and share them, and we'll ask them within the next couple of minutes. But if there's only one thing that you want all of us to remember, what is that one thing? Stephanie, why don't you kick us off? One thing.
I think the main thing is approaching conversations and your thinking towards your customers and your relationships from a point of empathy. We are all in this shared experience, and everyone sort of has a different take on it. But if you can approach it from, I want to listen and learn so that I can help, I think that'll take you a long way.
Awesome. I love that.
I guess I would say start planning now. Start planning for this new normal today. It's really hard in the current environment to think about the future, much less to do so optimistically and you know, to look forward to it, because it's so unknown and it's going to be a challenge and everything. But I think if you start now, you're in a better position. Obviously, I heard from one exhibit manager a couple of months ago who said that she and her team used to always dream of being able to take a year off of trade shows because they were always so busy executing the next event that they never really had the opportunity to look critically at what had happened at the previous event and to really identify whether their strategies and tactics made sense, whether they were targeting the right audience, whether they were exhibiting at the right shows and doing the right things. And I think that, you know, when they wished for that, this is not what they imagined, but you do have a gift in the sense that there is time. A lot of exhibit managers right now are saying, you know, we've got a lot of free time because we're not planning live trade shows and events. So use it to your advantage and, you know, conduct a really comprehensive audit of your past shows. Look for line items in your budget that are higher than they should be and work with your exhibit houses and your vendors to figure out how we can fix that, how we can spend more efficiently and more mindfully. You know, look at your target audience and figure out whether or not it's actually shifted and you just didn't notice it. Look at your objectives to make sure they still make sense for your company. Maybe you used to have brand awareness goals because you were a startup and you were growing, but now maybe those brand awareness goals don't make sense. Maybe you should be focusing your efforts elsewhere. You know, use the time, invest in your program, invest in yourself, in educating, take advantage of all these webinars that are out there and see what you can do to learn about your industry, to learn about live trade shows and events, to learn about marketing, and if nothing else, to see what other people are doing, because it might inspire some new ideas of your own. And if you can, survey your customers and past event attendees to find out what they need from you. I really think that if we take the effort to the time and the effort to do that, we're going to be in so much better of a position moving forward to make live events part of our company's recovery instead of a cost center. One really big statistic that I'll share with you is that a big chunk of people, about 39% of our readers, say that their upper management better understands the value of live trade shows and events today than they did before COVID-19. You know, they've seen a world with no live trade shows and events, and they've seen what that's done to their sales cycle and to their lead cycle and to their revenue, and they don't like it, right? So use that. Don't let them forget it as we move back into live trade shows and events. Always remind them of that year when we couldn't go to live trade shows and events and what it did to the business. And make sure they don't forget it, because moving forward, my hope is that fewer exhibit managers are going to have to focus their time on justifying their budgets and justifying the value of trade shows, and they can focus a little bit more on optimizing the investment in those trade shows.
That would be a dream come true, wouldn't it, Travis?
Right? I'm trying to be hopeful.
Justify trade shows and start just doing them. But I think, you know, everything that you guys have said is absolutely, but my one thing that I hope that you take away from this is relationships.
Yeah.
If there's anything we need to innovate, it's relationships. We need to innovate the way we interact with our own teams to improve that. We need to innovate the way we interact with our partners who can help us get business. We need to innovate the way we interact with our past customers, like Travis said. Those can be really great sources of business for you. Our customers, our prospects, the people around us. Really think about those relationships and how you can innovate the engagement so that it's higher quality, it's better, it's real, it's authentic. It's not, oh, this guy's gonna try to sell me something, now I'm gonna sit here and listen. There's no space for pitching and demoing and doing the old, you know, kinds of things that we've been doing. These are real human beings who have needs. Either they need what you have or you don't. Let's build relationships that allow them to engage with you and learn what they need to learn, but all the way through the organization, from the people you work with to the people you partner with, to your customers, your prospects. Let's reinvent this. Let's innovate the way that we have relationships with people and engage them so that when they are ready to buy, or they know someone else who's ready to buy, they will come to us because we've differentiated ourselves that way.
I love that. That's great. You guys are awesome. So glad you're on this panel. So thank you guys so much for taking time to share your insights. Allison over at the Modus team, I think she's received quite a few questions from you guys. So I'm going to turn it over to her. And we're going to do just a really quick rapid fire, answer all the questions you have. There is still time if you want to submit a question. So Allison, go ahead, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Megan. And thank you so much to our panelists. We've got a bunch of questions, so I know we're running up on time, so I'm going to ask some quick ones. This one is for Alice. What is the best size of the audience to have successful engagement with a virtual event? This question asker said that they've had internal ones, and with 20 people or more, it gets really hard for people to talk and share. So what is your advice on that?
Okay, so this is really important. First of all, you have to understand what is the purpose of the event, right? So in this type of event that we're doing, we're disseminating information. So we really don't have a ton of interaction, right? We can't see all of you. You can only see us. It's sort of a one-way communication. In that, you can communicate to a lot of people at one time, but we don't really know if they're engaged. I don't know if you're listening or if your kids are driving you nuts. I have no idea what you're doing. So if you want to have meaningful conversations online, it's very similar to in person. If you want everyone to have an opportunity to share and talk, 8, 10, 12, that's about all you can do. It's the same in person. So if you have a smaller group, everyone can be engaged, everyone can talk. Now, that said, if you are trained to do these kinds of things, you can do it with 20 or 30 people because there are lots of mechanisms to do that. So, for example, you can have people, write on a piece of paper if they have their videos on. So again, it depends what your purpose is. If you do want interaction, though, everyone has to have their video on. And some people don't like that. So you have to make sure in advance they're comfortable and they're in a setting where they can turn their video on and feel comfortable, and we're not their cat or their kids or whatever. Like if they come by, let's say hi. But a way to get, let's say you have 30 people on, make sure they have a marker and paper and they write something on and hold it up. And then everybody can see their answer, or they can do one finger for an answer, 2, 3, whatever. And you can see how many people have 1 finger, 2, or 3. So if their videos are on, there's tons of way to interact. If the chat's on, they can chat. If you use the Q&A, it's a little more organized for question and answer. If people get used to muting, unmuting themselves, it's a lot easier so they can unmute when they want to talk. But if you want interaction, whether it's a huge summit or a small event, you have to start way before the event starts, and you have to let them know it's interactive, so please arrive on time because we have networking right at the beginning. You won't want to miss it. We're going to ask you to please have a pen or a marker and some cardboard ready so you can have your answers up. You can mail out laminated cards in advance with different fun things, smiley faces or whatever, and people can hold those up. There are so many ways you can engage people. So as far as numbers, that doesn't really matter. You can engage a huge crowd of people if you know how to do it. But if you want people to actually have their video on and talk, yes, a group under 20 is really going to get you a higher quality conversation.
Awesome. Thank you, Alice. Our next question is for Stephanie. So as we think about how social distancing will alter the way that we bank, what are some things that may change in our banking experience?
Oops, you are muted.
Thank you. I think early on we started to see it right away with distancing happening in branches, the lineups and how people were, just entering a branch. I think what we've really started to see, though, is this trend towards digital and a combined in-person / digital experience. So appointment making. So you know exactly what you're going in for, who you're going to see, and what the topic will be, which I think is actually a really good use of digital to physical. Mobile use of like the banking app and payments is becoming big too. So I think that we'll see an emergence of more digital experiences. But I also think that as we look to the branches, there's opportunity for us to kind of consider it a lot like our retail counterparts have adjusted. So, the plexiglass, the masks and the hand sanitizers, but, can we also have more displays for people to interact with that either get them to the topic that they need to have somebody help them with, or maybe self-serve even within the branch. I definitely see that trend towards away from cash. So I think the more mobile payments and, the device kind of interaction from payments will be coming forward. But, I think banking still is pretty personal. So things like, video teller and places where we can still talk to somebody when we're in need. There is that emotional connection to some issues around banking. So we definitely are going to strive to make it the best for our customers in the way that they want to be served in the most comfortable way. And I think that we've been taking a lot of time during this, last couple of months to learn on that. And, we'll start to see some of those new features roll out here over the next few months. I think it's, kind of an exciting time too, because as everyone has shared here, we're going to be able to reinvent some things that existed in a way that maybe wasn't the best. And so this offers us a new opportunity as well.
Great, thank you so much. And then the last question is for all of you. We've gotten a lot of questions about people wanting to get in touch with you guys. They're really inspired and impressed. And so if we can just go through, in order, let's go Stephanie, Travis, Alice, if you guys can say your contact information, if you're comfortable with that, that would be great.
Okay. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Alice.
I'm Alice Hyman. It's Alice Hyman LLC. So you can just find alicehyman.com. But I'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn. And that's a great way because you can instant message on LinkedIn. And so it's easy for me to answer your questions that way. So just look for me on LinkedIn and mention that you saw me here with Stephanie and Travis on the panel with our great sponsors, Leadus and NParallel and Modus. And I would be happy to connect and answer any questions.
Yeah, same. I mean, LinkedIn is a great connection. You can find me there. You can find me on Twitter, which is @StantonTravis. And you can shoot me an email at editor@exhibitormagazine.com if you've got a specific question. Otherwise, I really encourage you to check out exhibitoronline.com/insight. That's our new webinar online learning initiative. And we have chats, we have panels, we have reports. We have an innovation series, all kinds of different things that we're really working to help and make sure that face-to-face marketers in particular, but really marketers of any kind, have the tools and education that they need to be successful in this time and as we move into the transition. So check that out and you can register for some additional webinars.
Great. Stephanie?
Yeah, and I would say the best for me is LinkedIn. I like it as well for the chat feature, but it also just allows you to connect to the network as well. So LinkedIn's probably the best place.
Beautiful. Well, thank you guys so much for your time, panelists, attendees, everyone. Here we've got some contact information for our sponsors. We are going to have follow-up events, so keep an eye on your inbox. Leadus's will be in July. Modus's will be towards the end of July, and NParallel's will be in August. So keep an eye out for that. We will send a link to the on-demand webinar, and everyone enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much for joining us today.